think you can expect to see reflected a rather dramatic difference in the type of Democrat Party that we're contending with now. We see it in Virginia, and I think we're seeing it nationally, but we have never seen it ascendant as it is now. If you go back to 1976, which in terms of sort of political development is where I think of us as being back to, that's the closest analogy to where we are here. But there were a lot of Democrats in Congress who would support things like the Hyde Amendment and who were pro-life Democrats. They were socially conservative to some degree or another that we wouldn't recognize today. Well, not anymore. Today's Democrat, average Democrat, is a socialist. Let's call it what it is. Now, reflecting back on my initial premise that the problem resides with us, when we propose a $700 billion bailout of capitalism by government, and when we add the biggest health care entitlement in the history of America, we are standing on sand to criticize the other side. We are not in a good position to do that. Unfortunately, we have given away our credibility, and we've got to get it back. That means leadership change. That means a new minority leader on Capitol Hill. Let's face it, folks. If we don't get back to core principles and have leaders who are willing to fight, instead of get up there and say, I didn't come here to do this, I'm going to eat this mud sandwich of socialism, you have an option. It's the red button on your desk. It's the only time I think of myself as red, is voting time. But there's a time for no. Conservatives always have to be cognizant of bringing a positive alternative. But you know what? There were plenty of conservatives on Capitol Hill who proposed, I recall reading over 10 positive alternatives to the bailout, which wouldn't have required taxpayer dollars, such as we saw with the ultimate bailout. That was a horrible, horrible piece of legislation. And as we hand over the administration from Bush to Obama, the people in control of that process, and if you've read the bill, I'm enough of a wonk that I read a lot of these bills, the power given to the Treasury Department is extraordinary in that bill. And I just got an email from Capital One, a Virginia company, that really wasn't touched by the mortgage problems. They didn't do mortgages. Capital One does unsecured loans. Sounds fairly risky, but it was interesting in talking to them. Unsecured loans, where they had done an analysis of the borrower, were safer to them than home loans under the environment that had been set up, and which I thought was frankly pretty savvy from a business perspective. They weren't the only ones to draw that conclusion. They weren't the only ones to just get lucky and do that. But they were on a fine footing from a capital perspective. Well, you know what? Last week I got an email that they took $3.5 billion of government investment. Why? There's no good reason. You need to stabilize Capital One. They were fine. That's how bad that bill was. And that's how weak our credibility is in terms of addressing these issues. As we go forward, we have literally got to be pretty strict internally in reestablishing the focus of the Republican Party on conservative core principles. That doesn't mean there's no room for anybody else. It doesn't mean you have to agree on every single issue, but you've certainly got to be committed to reining in government and reducing the power of government. That means keeping taxes low, but it also means keeping spending low. And until we're committed to doing that, until we're committed again to protecting the Constitution, we are not going to be a legitimate alternative force in American politics.
Thanks so much for watching this video. To watch our latest video, click here. And to make sure you don't miss any future videos, be sure to subscribe.